Hey, what's going on, everybody, and welcome to Rock Video Rental. I am Brandon, and with me, as always, is Caleb, and we are kicking off Stephen King month. We're going to be talking about Misery today. But before we get to all that, Caleb, what have you been watching?
I got sucked into video games this week. I was really bad. Even though I had the time and the opportunity, I didn't, I didn't watch anything because of Helldivers 2.
Rock
Dude, it has like, if,
consumed your soul.
yeah, I mean, I feel like if anyone has any connection to the video game community, you've seen all the posts and commotion going on about this game. There's really nothing quite like it. And yeah, it just sucks you in. Like I was up until 4 a.m. one night playing, so it's slightly addicting. And yeah, as far as stuff that I've watched, I was able to fit in this week's movie. Besides that, just a little bit of Family Guy before I crashed at the end of the night, so nothing really new there.
Rock,
So you can continue to carry this part of the segment.
be the bell cow of this. Okay.
Yeah.
Um, I got a fair amount of stuff, I guess, not a crazy bunch like I did last time. But the last time was also 3 weeks worth of stuff. I finished the Goldbergs, and again, I forgot how abrupt that show ended. The last episode is just like a normal episode until the last maybe 2 minutes, and they do like a montage of a bunch of stuff that's happened in the series, and then they like, do their goodbyes. That was pretty much it.
As we go on, we remember.
Vitamin C. Oh my gosh. 2000 much?
Right.
Along with that, I watched an episode of The Last Drive-In with Joe Bob Briggs. I watched Troma's War, which was pretty interesting. He actually had like Lloyd Kaufman on there. He was talking to him about like the making of the movie and all that. So it's pretty interesting. Um, I don't know. You might have to check out one of those one time. I'll let you know which ones, like, because he did one for Sleepaway Camp and had like Felissa Rose on there and interviewed her and everything.
Hmm.
So he's always got some interesting guests with like insight, and he like knows everything there is to know about movies. It's crazy. But I also watched Maniac Cop, which is like a slasher movie from the late 80s. It's got Bruce Campbell in it and Tom Atkins. And he interviewed Bruce Campbell during it. It was pretty interesting. He talked about his career and all that kind of stuff.
Hmm.
But other than those, I watched License to Drive for like the millionth time, but this time I watched it with the director commentary, and there was a lot of interesting facts in that the director shared, and just like how the cast worked together and how it was like his first big movie that he ever directed.
Okay.
And it was like him and the writer of the script talking about it and just like issues that they had, and like how both of the Coreys, like while they were like really talented, they didn't fully take their jobs as seriously as they could have. And like it's like they weren't like super troublesome or anything, and they got good performances out of them. It was just like if they would have taken it more serious, we could have probably did some less takes. And he
Oh.
just talked about how like the difference between them and Heather Graham, and like how she was so innocent, and it was like her first movie, and they were just like they were the Coreys. But it was interesting to hear all that stuff. I also watched two Giallo movies. I watched Torso, which was kind of interesting movie. It's much more of a slasher than some of the other ones I've seen. It's like from 1973. And being an Italian movie, like it's got a lot of like random nudity in it. It was, I don't know, almost distracting at times, but pretty solid movie all around. Then I watched Dario Argento's Opera. That one has some weird things in it. Like there's a raven that pecks out a dude's eye, and they show that pretty close up. And also you get rickrolled during it.
Nice.
I definitely was not expecting that. Like you could hear "Never Gonna Give You Up" in the background. Um, yeah, didn't see that one coming. And then I watched the latest WWE Legends biography. I always talk about these. They did one on Randy Orton, and that one was a lot better than I thought it was going to be. Like, I'm not a huge Randy Orton fan, but he had an interesting story to share. And man, that's pretty much it, other than like a few ESPN 30 for 30s that I've seen 100 times. Not really worth mentioning,
Mm.
but that's the end of my big list. Carrying you once again over the goal
I
line here.
I know, dude. I keep thinking like, oh yeah, sports is over, and then all of a sudden, like they drop this huge game, and I'm just like, okay, never mind. I'm not gonna
Well, it
watch
helps
it.
too that like, I work from home and I put things on just in the background. So like a lot of the stuff that I watch or whatever, I don't really pay too close attention to.
Hmm.
Where like that commentary for License to Drive was really more listening than watching because I've seen the movie so many times. So it was more like listening to a podcast.
Right,
But yeah, so I have more chances to watch more than you do.
right.
That you suck. So
I do
there's
suck.
that as well. But you know what doesn't suck is the movie Misery. And we can kick off Stephen King month. So let's jump in. Misery, it is from 1990 and is directed by Rob Reiner. The plot is after a famous author is rescued from a car crash by a fan of his novels, he comes to realize that the care he is receiving is only the beginning of a nightmare of captivity and abuse. The cast, we got James Caan as Paul Sheldon, Kathy Bates as Annie Wilkes, Richard Farnsworth as Buster, Frances Sternhagen as Virginia, and Lauren Bacall as Marcia Sindel.
Rock.
Uh, yeah, this is a movie I've seen quite a few times. Um, it's actually one I watched. I think the last time I watched it might have been 2 years ago. I watched it with my wife, and it was her first time watching it,
Okay.
and she really enjoyed it. So,
I
yeah.
don't. I don't know if my wife has seen this one.
How many times have you seen it?
Um, all the way through. I feel like this is a third time. I know that I've seen certain scenes quite a few other times, caught parts of it and everything. So, but it had been a while, and so it was kind of surprising about just like how simple and minimal this movie is, and
Yeah.
yet so much happens in what, an hour and 40 minutes or whatnot.
Yeah, it's kind of a slow burn, but it's enough to keep you interested. And it kind of piggybacks good off from Character Study Month
Hmm.
because there is like that things like escalate and Annie gets crazier and crazier as it goes on. But it's kind of funny how I got my wife to watch this the one time. Like she's usually not opposed to watching most things, and I kind of know like what I can have her watch and she'll enjoy, and other things that she's like, "This is dumb."
Hmm.
But we were watching The Office, and remember how Kathy Bates was on like some of the later seasons,
Oh yeah, totally.
and she's like, "Oh, I always like Kathy Bates. She's a really good actress." And I was like, "You ever seen Misery?" And she said, "No." I was like, "Well, we're gonna watch that."
Now you're gonna.
It's like it's probably one of her best performances. But
Yeah.
yeah, that's probably the biggest takeaway from this movie is her performance in this
Hmm.
because she was amazing in it. And I mean, she was won an Academy Award
Yeah,
for Best
rightfully so.
Actress. Yeah. Um, and I mean, I'm working with James Caan, which James Caan is always really good in everything he's in. And like, I don't feel like he ever really fully phoned things in. He's always got kind of that like kind of laid back, um demeanor, I guess, even in movies like Elf.
Yeah.
But that was just kind of like his acting style and his persona. And I feel like he's a little overshadowed in this movie because he did such a good job as well. But Kathy Bates just like just blows up everything she's in.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Well, is this Kathy Bates' first major role or
Um,
successful movie?
I think maybe it was really early in her career
Yeah, I
because she was
mean,
a stage actor for years.
it shows that she had done things since like 1970, basically. So she'd been doing stuff for 20 years. I'm not seeing anything, to my knowledge at least, that really turns any heads
Yeah.
before this. So, yeah, I mean, I feel like this performance really put her on the map. I,
Yeah, she
I
did this, and then like 8 years later, she was Mama in The Waterboy.
right.
She's one of those actresses that shows up in like a fair amount of things, but she's always really good. Even in The Office, like she kind of a decent sized role for what, maybe like 2 seasons,
Hmm.
but she was great in it.
Yeah.
It just like, her, because I feel like she's a very versatile actress where, she can do a suspense thriller movie like this, but also can do comedy. Yeah, like I
Hmm.
mentioned, The Waterboy and like The Office and things like that.
Oh my word,
Where
I forgot she was in Rat Race.
dude, she's been in tons of stuff.
Uh,
Always great though.
for sure.
Um, and it's such a small cast, but I feel like everybody within this cast was pretty solid. Because even Richard Farnsworth as the sheriff, like the small local sheriff, he was pretty good too. And I guess I didn't realize like how competent he was in this movie because I always remember him kind of being like the bumbling sheriff, but like he was kind of on top of things. It took him a little while to piece stuff together, but he didn't really have too much to work with.
Yeah,
But
there was some.
once he like started down the trail of figuring it out, then he was like right on top of it.
Mhm. Once he was able to start piecing things together, but also at the same time, and I'll bring it up kind of throughout. There were just kind of some things were just, well, that's not standard police protocol,
Yeah.
kind of a thing. But yeah, so it was a little bit interesting since it'd been a while since I watched it because I I mean, most of your memory from this movie, if you have seen it before, is going to be basically everything that's happening in Annie Wilkes' cabin.
Mhm.
And so I forgot how much actually took place outside of it.
Yeah.
So, and of course, Buster, the sheriff, was the main element outside of that. So, and he did a pretty good job. His wife, the character Virginia, his wife and deputy and assistant, was pretty funny. I swear I know her from something else, but I cannot put my finger on it.
I think she just has one of those recognizable faces.
Yeah.
I don't know, because I thought that too. Yeah, she had some funny moments too, like when you're first introduced to her, like him and her are driving down the road and she's like rubbing his leg. And she's kind of a horn dog almost. And like this lady's like in her 60s.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
he
And
said, "Hey, you're my deputy."
yeah, it's like when we're on the job, you're my deputy, not my wife. Oh God. Yeah, that cracks me up. Um, man, I feel like another kind of underrated thing in this movie is the scenery. Just like the location where it's shot at.
Hmm.
It's supposed to take place in Colorado. Whether or not they shot in Colorado, I didn't take the time to look into that, but just even like the shots of like outside of Annie's window, like you got mountains and all that kind of stuff and like the snow everywhere.
Well, I mean, just in general with not just the scenery, but how the movie shot. Because when you stop and you think about how minimal this movie is,
Hmm.
they really had to do a lot with very little.
Yeah.
Um, and you can actually notice throughout the movie when the mood of the film changes and the music changes, the camera angles change, and different elements like that. So even though you're in a very confined space and honestly not a lot is happening, they still make it I don't know if I would say chaotic or what, but there's a lot still going on with very few elements.
Hmm. Yeah, I was gonna
So,
say the amount of locations in this is like kind of similar to the number of locations that were in the room.
right.
Like there's really only a handful, aside from the couple times when she goes into town.
Mhm.
But um, I guess we can kind of get into this part. There's a couple things in this. One thing that always throws me off every time I watch this is that when it starts out, it shows the Castle Rock Entertainment logo. And like, okay, I know this is done by Rob Reiner, but every time I see that logo, I just immediately think of Seinfeld.
Yes.
And their jingle with the lighthouse. But yeah, that always kind of like throws me off a little bit. There's some kind of funny things. Like, I feel like this movie is kind of subtle with character building at times, like where we see Paul finishing his novel at the small hotel or whatever it was, or bed and breakfast or something. And he's like cleaning off his car and getting ready to leave, and he grabs a snowball and throws it at a tree, and he's like, "I still got it."
Yeah.
Like that kind of made me laugh because that's totally something I do. Like anytime it snows, I'm cleaning my car off. I always end up making a snowball and throwing it at something.
Yeah, it's so funny because that happened. I was like, "Oh, look, he's relatable. He throws snowballs too. I do that."
Exactly. And then soon after that, like he's like bombing down the road in a Mustang. And I'm like, okay, dude. I was like, I'm from Michigan. I was like, maybe you're driving a little too like fast in a snow-covered road, like
Yeah.
on a
It,
mountain with no guardrails in a rear-wheel drive car.
it makes me think of what Dwight from The Office says about Michael's car. He's just like that car is such a poor choice for this climate
Yes.
or whatever, some kind of snide comment like that.
Yeah.
It's like,
Cause
dang.
because Michael's got the convertible.
Yeah.
Exactly. Who's gonna drive up in the mountains with a freaking Mustang?
Oh man, I couldn't, dude. I could imagine doing that with a standard vehicle, but a Mustang, dude. I'd be like pooping my pants.
Right. And he's driving like 50 miles an hour around the curves too. Smart idea. And of course he crashes. Shocker.
It was actually Nicolas Cage from Gone in 60 Seconds.
It was Paul Walker, Fast and Furious. Uh, Dom would have just drove on top of the snow because the
Family,
power of family.
our family.
Oh gosh. And then he gets pulled from the car and we don't see who did it. And it's like they do CPR on him. And I was like, this is very weak CPR. As someone who's taken a BLS class, basic um life saving.
Basic listening skills.
Yeah. Um, like I've taken a CPR class at
Yeah.
work before, and I'm
Mm,
like, I'm not sure those chest compressions would do anything, and the amount of breaths that they're taking in, that wasn't very deep breaths. Like I don't know, nitpicky thing.
mm,
And then like, she pulls him from the car. I was like, okay, James Caan. Like, how much does James Caan weigh? Like, he's a taller dude.
um,
He's taller than 6 foot. I was like, my guess, maybe he weighs 180 pounds.
well,
And
dude, they
she throws him up in a fireman's carry and carries him up a snowy hill. I was like, who is Annie Wilkes? Is she freaking Brock Lesnar?
Dude, she did it again too when she put him in the basement towards the end of the
Yeah,
movie.
yeah,
I was like, okay.
yeah. Like I'm a full grown man. I'm not sure I could throw James Caan up on my shoulders and carry him up a hill.
Hmm.
Uh,
That's pig farmer strength right there.
right. Corn fed. Uh, yeah, the pig that she named Misery after Paul's character in his book.
Mhm.
Ah, yeah. And so he like wakes up there and his legs are all jacked up and they show him, and that's pretty disgusting.
Yeah.
Um, and then I had this. It's like I just love how low key of an asshole Paul kind of is at the beginning. And like how he's kind of annoyed with some of the stuff she's doing.
Hmm.
Yeah. And it's this is even before like he finds out that she's nuts.
Right. Well,
Yeah. And
then
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 like
he
once he
totally,
finds out she's nuts, he's like, oh
yeah, I can't do that anymore.
yeah.
Oh man.
Oh God, there's a couple exchanges in this movie too that just kind of throw me off because she like reads his latest book. She's like, it's better than perfect. It's divine. And he just like was all right, okay, that's a weird reaction. And then she's like, it's this, and she's like, what was the ceiling that Dago painted? I'm like, okay, we're gonna drop a freaking ethnic slur in this. And I was like, how do you not know it's a Sistine Chapel?
Oh man.
Uh, and my 6 year old,
Do you watch
5 year
this
old,
movie with you? No, I'm just kidding.
no, my soon to be 6 year old, she even knows that Michelangelo painted the Sistine Chapel.
Nice.
So it's like just drop an ethnic slur. But yeah, that one kind of caught me off guard. And like the many times I've seen this, I forgot about that. Then as this movie goes on, we gotta talk. It's like a bit of a character study because
Hmm.
we find out more things about her as we go. Like how she was married at one point, and they have that really awkward conversation, and it's really awkward because he's pissing in a jug under a
Yeah.
blanket at the time. Oh gosh.
Well, and then
And
around that time where you were just talking about uh her reaction to how good his writing was,
yeah,
she slips in "I love you, Paul,"
yeah,
and it's just like, and so this is like the turning point where he's kind of like, okay, like something's not right here. And I was just like, huge red flag. Like she rebounds by being like, I love you, Paul. I mean, I love your work and the writing that you do and something. And I'm just like, oh my gosh.
yeah. She's like a non-committed boyfriend trying to try to deflect that. Like, I love spending time with you.
Yeah. It's
Uh,
like Ross. Well,
yes.
where do you see us?
I'll make fajitas. That has nothing to do with that, but I was thinking about that with Ross. Oh man. And then Suchi freaks out because she finds out that Misery is dying
Oh man.
in the book that the last book Paul wrote, and then she like makes him write a new one.
Oh, just total freak out. Like, I don't know. I'm not sure if it went through my mind completely the very first time I watched this movie, but this time I was just watching maybe more closely and trying to let it sink in on being like, could you imagine being completely helpless and realizing that the only person with you is utterly crazy?
Yeah. Yeah, how awful would that be?
Oh man, like oh,
Like
I don't
I'm
know, but
depending on this person to make me heal up and take care of me, but they're also a person that could kill me at any minute.
yeah. Well, okay, so I can't, I didn't write it down specifically in order, but it goes from, okay, this lady's weird. Okay, this lady is totally crazy to oh my gosh, I think it went from crazy to oh my gosh, she has a gun
Yeah.
or something to that degree. And I'm just like,
Well,
like,
she builds up to that a little bit too because she freaks out. She grabs that end table and comes towards
yeah.
him, and he thinks that she's gonna hit him, and she smashes it on the wall above him. And that's
Mm.
when she finds out that Misery is dying. And
So,
then she drops that "nobody knows that you're here" kind of line.
oh my gosh, yeah.
Yeah, it's like
And
that's unnerving. And that's when he like climbs out of bed, and I just like that was another shot of James Caan's acting being amazing in this, just because of like the physical acting of it. When he pulls his legs out of bed and they hit the floor, and he just like writhes and screams
yeah.
like that. That makes me wince, and like I'm
Hmm.
just watching a movie.
Yeah. I mean, we've all had some crazy exes, but I don't know if we had anything quite that bad.
No, not anything that bad. Um,
Well,
she
one,
throws a few Bible verse or Bible lines in there too, like religious stuff too. I'm like, okay, so we're gonna go with that dimension as well.
oh man, there were so many layers to this.
Yeah.
Um, not to get too far ahead, but she has several rants, I guess you might
Yes.
say it. And I think one that always sticks out to me is her rant about the movie shows that she watched as a kid.
Yeah. The cereals.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and she talks about getting up in the theater and being like, "No, we're getting cheated. That's not what happened. This isn't fair. It's not fair." And she like, dude, her rants.
He didn't get out of the cock-a-doodle car.
Oh my gosh,
Yeah.
cockadoodie. Her rants. I mean, I if she did not win for this, I would want to see what everyone else did in comparison to this performance because those rants are just
Next
s-
level.
oh yeah, so believable. Like you see this and you're just like, holy smokes, Kathy Bates is nuts.
Hmm.
So,
Yeah, though one of the scenes too where she's slowly building up to being like dangerous, and you talked about her, all of a sudden boom, she's got a gun, is when she makes him burn the book,
hmm,
and she's got talking, and she's like dousing him in lighter fluid
yeah,
like it's a natural thing, and it's like she makes it almost look like it's an accident, but at the same time it's more of like a threat.
yeah.
Like you don't really have a choice, you burn this book or I burn you kind of thing.
Ugh.
uh yeah, that one really caught me this time. Like I've always noticed it, but this time it kind of sunk with me more.
Hmm.
um and like I said, then she makes him write another book. She gets the typewriter for him in the wrong paper, and then she freaks out again over it. Because
Yeah.
he tells her like you can't type with this paper, it smears, and he shows her, and then she freaks out.
Hmm.
Yeah, which leads to one of my most memorable and favorite scenes. Is so she leaves to go get the other paper, and then he uses a bobby pin to pick the lock on the door, and he goes like exploring around the house, and he finds a telephone, and he starts dialing and realizes it's not doing anything, and it's just like an empty shell. And it cracked me up because he like looks at it and he like says, "Crazy bitch." Like sets it down.
Oh man.
But the tension in that scene is just awesome because she's already had the blow up, so he knows like I gotta get the hell out of here. This woman's nuts and she's gonna kill me. Um, and he's like trying to find a way to like get some contact with the outside world or let somebody know that he's there. And like boom, like he hears her car start coming back, and that's when it gets like really gut wrenching
Oh yeah.
because he's like trying to hurry and he always got the busted up legs. He's in a wheelchair. His one shoulder isn't even back to full strength, and like somehow he finally makes it back. And then like he's super sweaty, and then like he claims it's because he needs his pills, kind of thing. So she kind of um feels awful for him and everything like that.
Yeah,
But
talking about gut wrenching and everything, one thing I'd forgotten from previous views was his attempt to drug her
yeah,
and how that failed.
yeah,
And when that happened, I was just like, oh my gosh,
yeah. His
to
face is like agonizing.
be right there and have that happen.
Hmm.
Ugh, brutal.
Yeah, and she makes meatloaf that has spam mixed in it. And he's like,
And
oh,
not and tomatoes that were not canned.
yeah, they're fresh.
Hmm.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, but this like the complete and like despair on his face so that she knocks over that wine that
Hmm.
he drugged. Oh man. It's right around this time too where, I said that the sheriff was kind of on top of things once he started piecing it together. They pull Paul's car up and like the state police or something like that, or the ranger was just like, he's presumed dead. Um, we know that he got out of the car, but he could be laying somewhere under the snow and we won't know until the thaw,
Hmm.
kind of thing. And I'm like, you can't use dogs to find him. And then also the local podunk old man sheriff is the only one that notices that there's crowbar dents on the door.
Right.
Yeah. So he's like, and his wife's like, you don't think he's dead, is he? Or do you? And he's like, well, there's these dents here on the door. It's like somebody pried that open.
Dun, dun, dun. So this is where one of my first big questions come in, where it's like, okay, fine, like go along with the movie, but it's like at that point when you have located the car and
Hmm.
you know that he got out, apparently with the help of someone else, wouldn't you just start going to people's houses and start asking questions?
Yeah, especially in such a small town.
Right. Like they flew over in the helicopter and were just like, oh, there's that farm. Oh, there's that place. So it's just like there's at least a handful of places here around that area. So you could just go and ask people and be like, what have you seen? Blah, blah, blah. But no, his police skills are lacking, I guess.
Well, his first thing to do is to go and buy all the Paul Sheldon books and read them.
Read them in bed.
Yeah. So he's going through reading all the misery books. But he doesn't really get like more information until he goes to, like the general store.
Hmm.
And I have to mention too that the guy is restocking his VHS tapes.
Oh, nice.
That made me laugh. Um, and that guy tells him like, "Oh, have you heard about Paul Sheldon?" kind of thing. And he starts asking questions about Annie, and he's like, "Yeah, she makes sure that she gets the first copy of every book of his that comes in." He's like, and lately she's bought paper and a typewriter. And then that's when the sheriff's like, "Huh," and like he like rushes out of this out of the store, and that's when he goes to Annie's house. But
Also, another bad move on his part, poor police skills, is not telling anyone where he's going and not
yes,
taking anyone with him.
yes, exactly. No backup. And also, before we get to all that, we get like a writing montage with Paul on the typewriter. Um, and we get that weird night where it's raining and Annie like has that weird meltdown kind of thing where
With the
she's like
gun.
super bummed out and then she's got the gun and she talks about wanting to put bullets in it and everything.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Yeah, and then she takes off and then he goes back out in the house and then he like finds those newspaper clippings about her, like news about her and
The
what was
baby's
it? Like
dying?
yeah, babies dying and all that kind of stuff and like didn't her husband die or something like that?
I don't remember about the husband, but yeah, I did not understand the details about the
Disgraced
babies.
nurse or something like that. It said, yeah, angel of death or something they called
Yeah.
her. Yeah, and it was just messed up stuff, and that's what he like, totally knows what he's working with here.
Mm.
Um, and he wakes up in the middle of the night and she's standing over him, which is terrifying. And she injects him with something. He passes out. Comes in the morning, and then she like tells him like, "I know you've been getting out because the penguin figurine always faces due south, and he knocked it over in the earlier scene and put it back and it was facing north."
Mm.
Yeah, and then we get the hobbling scene,
Oh my
which is
gosh.
probably one of the most famous parts of this movie. She gets a wood block and puts it between his ankles and smashes his feet with a sledgehammer, and like it just wraps around the board.
Yeah, the first
God,
one when they show it, it's just
yeah,
like, oh
oh,
my gosh. I
yeah,
can't I can't imagine, dude.
yeah. And then that's when the sheriff shows up. She sees the sheriff coming and she injects Paul again. Um, and then she puts him in the basement. Like he's like we talked about how she has a superhuman strength. The sheriff comes and talks to her and like she's explains the way the paper and a typewriter is like she was distraught about hearing about Paul. And then she said that God spoke to her or whatever and said that you need to take his place.
Oh
So now
man.
she's trying to write. She's like, I can't do it. I'm not as good as him. Blah 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 blah. And this is where we see like how manipulative she is. And
Hmm.
like doing all that, like she kind of lowers the sheriff's defenses. And he's
Yeah.
like still looking around trying to find where Paul's at. And he leaves. And then Paul starts making noise in the basement by knocking a grill over. The sheriff comes back in. He runs to the door where that goes in the basement. And he's like, Mr. Sheldon, and all of a sudden Annie just like shoots him with a shotgun like right through his back.
Blows a hole through his chest.
Yeah, and kills him. Again, great police work there. Um, yeah, shouldn't he like ran in and like put her in cuffs?
Yeah, he
Like located her instantly and told her like get on the ground, put her in cuffs, and then go and try to figure out the noise.
mhm.
Uh, Seems like that'd have been smarter.
Yeah.
But
Well, I mean, if if you think that the dude might still be alive and you're going to someone's house and like she has not reported him alive, she's not done anything, so many red flags where it's just like something's not right. You don't just waltz in there by yourself and be like, "Hey, what's going on?"
yeah, I heard a noise. Boom. It's the last thing you heard.
Mhm.
Oh man. And then soon, like, Annie realizes, okay, I killed the sheriff. People were gonna be looking for him.
It's
And like this
over.
gotta come to an end, yeah. So she tells Paul her plan, like how she always fell in love with his writing, now she fell in love with the man and everything that goes with him. And we need to be together forever, kind of thing. So I got my gun, I'm gonna put two bullets in it, one for you, one for me, and we can be together forever. And he pleads with her that he can't go until he finishes his book. And that way they can put misery to like, her finalized story or whatever. And of
Yeah,
course she agrees to
immortalize her
that.
or whatnot.
Yeah, of course she agrees to that because she's obsessed with his books. And then he finishes it and he asks for his normal stuff, his Dom Perignon and one
Cigarette.
cigarette and a match. And when she takes off, like he's got the lighter fluid that he grabbed from the basement and he doses the book. And then she comes in and like he lights the match and sets it on fire. She goes to like put the fire out and he bashes her in the head with the typewriter.
Yeah, how they logically try to make it like no big deal that she just got hit with like a 50-pound typewriter in the head just like blows
Crazy,
my
crazy
mind.
strength. Then they have a fight and like he gouges her eyes out and he does like a palm strike to her nose and breaks her nose and then she shoots him.
Hmm.
He tackles her and then I love the part where he grabs like the burnt remains of the book and he is like eat it till you choke, you sick twisted fuck.
Oh man.
That's so great. And she like overpowers him again, and then she tries to run at him and hit him with something, and he trips her, and she falls face first on the typewriter and knocks herself out.
And you think it's over.
Yeah, do you think it's over? And then she comes after him again, and he bashes her in the head with like a heavy door stop thing.
Mhm.
And I'm like, okay, if that was me and I was in that situation, and like she already got up from getting hit in the head with a typewriter and then falling face first on a typewriter, I was like, I'd probably take that doorstop thing and bash her head until I saw brains,
Yeah,
just to be like certain.
mm-hmm. No, for sure. One thing that we kind of glazed over that I had down in my notes that I forgot to mention was one of the funniest parts, though. It was right before I think the sheriff came to investigate. He's sitting by the window. It was after she hobbled him, and
Hmm.
he was sitting by the window, and she comes back from town, and she's outside with the pig, and she like waves at him, and he just flips her off.
I forgot about that. Uh, that's a classic.
It's just like, I hate you. You should just shoot me.
Yeah, yeah, man, fuck you. Oh man. And then now we get like 18 months later, and he's like walking down the street with a cane, and he's talking to his publicist or whatever about his latest book and how the critics are really gonna like it and everything. And she's like, "You should write a book about what happened with you and Annie." And he doesn't really want to do that. And he like envisions the waitress as Annie. And then of course she says, I'm your number one fan."
Oh gosh.
And he like died inside and just
Dude, I don't even know how like there are certain things in life that I don't know and understand how people could move on from. And if there was some real experience like that, like I don't even know, dude. Like
yeah.
the nightmares, the night terrors, the
Probably never drive anywhere ever again.
yeah.
I know I probably wouldn't.
Mm-mm.
Oh, jeez. Anything else? You want me to get into trivia and facts?
Yeah, we can move on to trivia and facts.
Rock. I have a few things here. So, Stephen King was quite impressed with Kathy Bates' performance in the film, so much that he later wrote two more roles for her. The title role in his novel Doris Claiborne was written for Kathy Bates in mind, and Bates later starred in the film adaptation of um that book, Doris Claiborne. He also wrote the script for the TV miniseries The Stand in 1994. His original novel featured a male character named Ray Flowers. Upon hearing that Bates wanted to be involved in the miniseries, he rewrote the part for a woman, spelled Rae Flowers, just so Bates could play the part, and it was uncredited.
Rock.
Yeah. James Caan once showed up to the set hungover, and all the scenes he shot that day were unusable. Rob Reiner told Caan that he had to do the scenes again because there was a problem with the lab. When Khan learned that it had nothing to do with the labs, he offered to cover the money that he lost the studio.
Hmm.
So it's funny you tagged me in a picture today of Kathy Bates and Jack Nicholson from The Shining
Right.
behind a typewriter because Jack Nicholson was offered the role of Paul Sheldon,
Okay.
but he passed on it because he was um, not sure he wanted to do another movie based on a Stephen King novel after what he experienced with Stanley Kubrick in The Shining. And if you know anything about The Shining and Stanley Kubrick, is that Stanley Kubrick was kind of a dick and he's nuts. Yeah, and he was super anal about that movie. So pretty much everybody had a terrible experience with that movie.
No.
So one of Stephen King's first typewriters actually had a malfunctioning N key, just like this one. Um, in the novel, the typewriter also drops its T's and E keys. Those two letters are the second and first most commonly used letters in the English language, making Paul's job even tougher.
Hmm.
So James Caan had to stay in bed for 15 weeks of shooting. Caan said he thought that Rob Reiner was playing a sadistic joke on him, um, knowing the actor and would not enjoy not moving around for so long. Caan was not used to playing a reactionary character and found it much tougher to play.
Okay.
So James Caan and Kathy Bates clashed over their acting methods. Caan believed in a little rehearsal as possible. Bates, with her theater background, was used to practicing a lot. When she commented to Rob Reiner that Caan was not attempting to relate or listen to her, Reiner told her to use that frustration towards the character.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's totally where my mind went to as well.
Yeah.
Use it.
Stephen King was initially reluctant to sell the film rights to Misery because he was skeptical that a Hollywood studio would make a movie faithful to his vision. However, King was impressed with one adaptation of his works, which was Stand By Me, and he agreed to sell Misery under the um, proviso that Rob Reiner would either produce or direct the film,
Hmm.
because he also produced Stand By Me, or directed, I mean, Stand By Me. So, according to William Goldman's book, for his screenplays, the role of Paul Sheldon was offered to Warren Beatty, Robert De Niro, Michael Douglas, Richard Dreyfuss, Harrison Ford, Morgan Freeman, Mel Gibson, Gene Hackman, Dustin Hoffman, William Hurt, Kevin Kline, Al Pacino, Robert Redford, Denzel Washington, and Bruce Willis, all of whom declined. Willis, however, would later play the role of Paul Sheldon years later on the Broadway adaptation of Misery.
Really, all those people declined.
Yeah.
Wow. And
And I mean, James Caan was great in it, but could you imagine, like Harrison Ford or Denzel even? It's interesting that they would have made Paul Sheldon a black man because, I mean, they had Morgan Freeman offered too, but both of those also would have been great choices.
that would have been
Or Gene
different.
Hackman.
It just kind of surprises me a little bit that James Caan was all the way down that line.
Yeah.
Because I mean, he already compared to Kathy Bates was well established by this point.
Yeah, it was in The
Bec-
Godfather.
yeah, 1972. So like almost 20 years before this, he was already, doing big titles. So,
Brian's song.
dude, I forgot he died.
Yeah, he did not too long ago.
Yeah, back in 2022.
Yeah. Way to be a downer. Uh,
Sorry.
so James Caan's fake legs were molded out of gelatin. Armatures with wire were inserted into the prosthetic ankles so that when Annie hit them with a sledgehammer, that they would bend around of the desired gruesome angles. There were holes cut into the mattress so that Khan could put his real legs up to the knee inside.
Hmm.
In the novel, Annie cuts off Paul's foot to prevent him from escaping. The screenwriter William Goldman had stated that the reason he decided to adapt the book to film was because of the gruesome scene and that the effect would have on the audience. However, Rob Reiner and Andrew Scheinman's script revision changed that method of torture to Paul getting his ankles broken with a sledgehammer. Goldman was opposed to the change until viewing the film.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
I
can
could.
imagine like hacking his foot off.
Yeah, that I've just in the bare bones high level view of it, I think the breaking is a lot better because, yeah, I mean that just takes the insanity level so much further.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. And then she had like the whole backstory about the diamond mines and all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It just added a different dimension. And the last thing I got is this movie cost $20 million and it made 61 in the box office.
Rock.
Now grades. IMDb, Rotten Tomatoes, what are they?
Well, I always hate it because I use IMDb so much. I did stumble across this one. So it's a 7.8, isn't it?
It is a 7.8.
I'm a little surprised that it didn't reach 8 or higher.
Yeah, I would give it like an 8.5.
Yeah. So, and then Rotten Tomato Critic 80, no, yeah, 89%.
91.
Oh. Um, Audience 88.
90.
Dang it.
Yeah, high ratings. What's yours?
Uh, man,
It sucked. Give it a 2.
boo. Kathy Bates sucks. Dude,
I
I
didn't like
just
any of that.
big fat phony. Um, I have a hard time not giving this a 5 because um it just the amount of emotion and how much they're able to pull you in with minimal cast, minimal setting, and they just make it so grueling and intense. The
Hmm.
performances by James Caan and Kathy Bates just phenomenal. Um, there are plenty of things that are kind of like just elements of this movie that I guess maybe you'd say don't really shine. Like the soundtrack I've was good. I don't feel like it was anything too special. The supporting members in the movie, I mean the sheriff did a good job. There weren't a ton of supporting characters, but nobody did bad, but nobody else really did a fantastic job. But so much of this movie was just those two,
Hmm.
Kathy Bates and James Caan, and they both knocked it out of the park. So it it really hits home, and it really is super disturbing. So I give it a 5 out of 5.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, I really can't give it anything less than a 5 just because of, the two main actors doing such great jobs in it. The pacing of the movie, because it is a slower burn movie, but there's enough to keep you interested and enough like ramps up towards the
Mm-hmm.
end. And I think a lot of that has to do with the acting, especially from Kathy Bates. Um, I think it was directed extremely well too. I mean, I like all Rob Reiner movies. I don't think I've ever seen one of his that I didn't like. Even ones that were considered flops in the box office. Um, I've seen and I always enjoy it. I always like him as an actor too. So,
Mm-hmm.
um, and I think it's shot really well. Some of the angles, like that angle where he's sleeping and he wakes up in the middle of the night and she's like standing over him, and with the lighting and like the lightning and stuff going off with that, that's just like an extremely effective shot. And the whole hobbling scene too, like you see the setup, you see her grab the sledgehammer, she swings it, he screams, they like zoom way back and you see the foot bend over the piece of wood for like a second and they cut away and you don't see the second hit.
Mm-hmm.
But you can imagine it. And I feel like things like that are always more effective than like gratuitous shots. You know, because if this was made in the 2000s, they would have zoomed right in on that, and
Yeah.
you would have saw like the entire thing and like blood spray and
Right.
everything. Yeah, it would have been way overdone, way overproduced. But this one had the it was done by a, a professional director that knew exactly what he was doing. So um I think that really helps the film as well. But yeah, an easy 5 out of 5 for me too. And I think it's one of the best Stephen King adaptations.
Rock. Did you read
I've
the
definitely
book?
seen some of the worst ones, and yeah, I would say this is one of the best ones.
Did you read the book?
No, I have not. I did have a copy of it. I got it at a thrift store, but I sold it. It was more like a, oh, this is an early edition of this book, so I'm gonna buy it and then sell it.
Rock.
Have you read the book?
Dude, I don't read anything.
I was gonna say, I was like, I know you don't read too often.
I haven't even read I took it on vacation with me, but I didn't even get into the you found me the novelization of Air Force One,
Yes,
and I haven't gotten into that yet. So
that was really more of a joke. Don't feel like you have to read that, but you do have to read The Disaster Artist when I get that to you.
nice. Yeah. I want to read that one. No, I mean, like I generally genuinely took it with me because I am interested, I do really like that movie. And so I thought it'd be a good read, but I don't know, I don't know. Books are good, man. I just am more of a movie person, so
No, I get it. But yeah, we're going to be continuing on next week with more of Stephen King month. Funny, we're going to be doing back-to-back Rob Reiner adaptations. We're doing the aforementioned Stand By Me, which is another classic and another one that I consider one of the best King adaptations. So, I know you've seen that before. We've talked about it.
oh yeah.
So it'll be fun to watch that one again. It's been a little while since I've seen it, a couple of years, I think.
Hmm.
Yeah, if you guys are liking the show, please subscribe, leave us a review, follow us on all of our social media platforms. Check out our YouTube. There is more content on there. We got some more stuff on TikTok as well. It's been a while for both of those platforms, but there should be enough to entertain you for a while. But come by next week. We're going to be talking about Stand By Me. And until then, as always, be kind and rewind.